Hello and welcome to another episode of the Jump Music Initiative podcast. Today we have with us Ryan Guay. We're so happy to have you here and learn a lot more about your role in the industry. So Ryan is the lead singer of the band Street Pharmacy, and he's found a niche in writing and producing for lots of great Canadian acts, and he's also a full-time teacher. So I'm not going to say too much about you, Ryan, though, because I'd like you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your role in the music industry and how you got started.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here, and I think what you guys are doing is great. Well, I started out in the music business as almost immediately as just a guy that wrote songs. I like to write songs. I was writing songs as a small child, and I've always made that sort of the center point of my existence as a musician. I'm not like a fantastic guitar player or anything like that. I'm proficient in a couple instruments, but I always felt like that was where I wanted to be, was where I like to write songs. So yeah, that's sort of where I started, and that's where I currently am. I've played and filled all kinds of roles in the music business. I've been my own manager and managers for others with some success. I've been a concert promoter with some success. I had a festival at one point that did okay. I've helped to develop a music club as a teacher that teaches students of mine about the music industry and like the practicality of it, like royalty collection, and it's important to have contracts and things like that. And I think we won National Youth Arts Week Club of the Year in 2012, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
it was like a crash course of music. I guess it would be like music industry arts or like media arts or something like that. So I did something like that without really knowing what it was called. I just saw a need and tried to fill it as an educator for students that were like me when they were younger and just didn't really have a clue how to get started. But yeah, I got started, and I didn't even realize I got started. I just did it. If that makes any sense. Like I just came out of the womb wanting to do this, and there was nothing else ever. I'm not kidding. And I just kept going until it worked, worked for me. And I mean, that's all subjective, right? I guess. So yeah, I guess can you help me understand the question a little bit more? Are you asking like what was my first break? Because I don't know if I've had lots of breaks at things, or are you guys looking at like more of the philosophy of?
No, I think that was good. That was just like a kind of overview of and a little bit of background of kind of how you came to be in this industry.
Okay.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And cool. That's awesome what you said about you obviously wear a bunch of different hats, and that's kind of the case for lots of people nowadays as independent artists and such. So that's great. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your role as a band in a band leadership type position. So for young artists who might be looking at starting a band or running a band, can you share some tips with us about what they need to know about like assigning roles and how leadership works and how everything needs to go to make things run smoothly?
I don't know if I'm the best guy to ask about that. I'm going to try my best. I learned a lot of lessons. I've been at this in Street Pharmacy for this will be our 15th year, which is crazy. I think my band was different. I took a different approach. I was the primary songwriter and the creative engine of the group from the beginning. Like I really wanted it, and I struggled when I was younger to find people where I'm from in Niagara region that also really wanted it and also wanted to play the kind of music that I wanted to play, or the kind of music that I was good at. So that was always like the first thing as a band leader is, if you're the central artist in a situation, you're just like when you create songs, you're in control of who you put around you as well. So you need to find people that you have good personal and business chemistry with. You need to find people to play with and to create with that are on the same page as you in a lot of different ways and things. To begin with, because you're building the bedrock or foundation of a long-term relationship with your band members. And if you don't select those people correctly in the beginning, when you're forging a brand that is a band, and those relationships crumble and deteriorate, you're forced at rebranding or getting somebody new in the band. And that just sort of causes, in my opinion, sometimes preliminary in the beginning, or even when you've had success after, dissension amongst the fans that you have, right? Like you're going to get into a situation where if let's say there's going to be, you're going to divert in a band. Like bands are finite a lot of times, right? Chemistry and interests change over time as people develop, especially when you're younger, as most bands start when you're younger, right? Like you're just trying to figure it out. Then you start in high school or even before that, or when you're early 20s, like you're not even like fully developed as an adult when you're doing this, right? So you might not even know who you are. You know yourself and what you want, and then sort of assess what other people want and that chemistry based on that. But if you get in a position where, you're in a band for 3 or 4 or 5 years and you realize that guys in your band don't want the same things and you start a rebrand of the band, and you've already had some sort of semblance of success or some sort of track record, what's going to happen is some fans are going to be like, oh, I liked it better when this guy was there. Or I liked it better when, like, I don't know, look at the case of, let's just say Weezer. There's so many different cases of this, but how many Weezer fans are like, oh yeah, when Matt Sharp was in the band, like that's when they were great, like Blue Album and Pinkerton, and like, Matt Sharp was some sort of creative genius or like some BS caller on Rivers Cuomo's, approach to writing. It's like, I don't know if that's necessarily true. Like, I don't know. He left and made a band with his wife, and that band's great. The Rentals, they sound like Weezer, just, way more nerdy, I guess. But this is the kind of, I'm sure Rivers doesn't think about this at night because he's sleeping on copious amounts of money for being a successful songwriter. But like, these are things you kind of have to realize. Like sometimes your philosophy is not going to be conducive to somebody else's. So when you're the band leader, like you sort of have to be direct and honest about what you want and how you want to go about it. And then open that dialogue up to people that you trust that also have the same foundation or similar foundation to you, and see if they can either contribute to that or convince you that it's wrong and it makes sense, your direction. You kind of have to, it's a conversation. You got to continuously converse, and you have to try to minimize the impasses that you're going to have by collaborating rather than, entering into a win-lose, negotiation. It's compromise obviously when you have to, but it should be a collaboration. It's art, so.
And all of those things.
That's the best approach I can give you.
That's good. That kind of leads me into a question I want you to comment on a little bit about the fact that you can be a band leader and you can be a songwriter for a band. You're in a band and you're very much in the band, but you also have another side to you that's a solo artist, that's your own songwriter, that's doing stuff that's not necessarily with the band. How do you balance those two things?
Well, I'm not really like a solo, like Street Pharmacy is my thing, I guess. Like there's a lot of people that make it work over the years. Like definitely I've had a lot of different musicians involved, like Ian Blackwood, who's a good friend of mine, who's also been on your Jump Music podcast. Him and I have made lots of Street Pharmacy music together. And I've always found a way to find people that, I like the qualities of their musicianship or their personality or whatever it is. And then I try to collaborate and make music with them under the brand. It's like me plus.
I see.
So my philosophy had changed over the years. At first, I think I was trying to make it and force it into a band or into some sort of collaborative where there was the same group of guys. But again, I mean, I'm from a different place and, a small town where a lot of the guys that wanted to play this type of music, they might not have really wanted what the results were that I wanted. You know what I mean? So
yes.
Finding guys like Ian Blackwood or Will Marr from Ill Scarlet and John Doherty from Ill Scarlet, like I worked with them on the same record as Ian, or Johnny from Walk Off the Earth. Like, there was a level of understandability and drive and compatibility musically that helped me grow my own brand. The stuff that I do on the side, or not really on the side, it's really become a lot of the forefront, I guess. And it was always that way, was that I wrote for other people. At first as a ghostwriter and then as a credited songwriter. And I found success at that and balancing that. Again, it's just something that I really like to do. And people were interested in wanting to co-write with me. And in that dialogue that I was talking about, where you're, trying to collaborate and figure out how, what other people have asset wise in songwriting and learn from them, and they learn from you. It's like a trade-off. I felt that I took that approach with my own music as well. So coming from being a writer for others, and really that's kind of how it started for me anyway. I took that approach in my own group later on as I grew older. I was like, okay, so I might write top line and melody, and chord progressions in Street Pharmacy, and it's, but I'm also, taking those ideas to other people, and they're putting in their own, twist on them, production wise or playing wise. And that's how my band works currently.
Right. I see. And that's what gives it the sound, really, the overall sound, kind of. Yeah,
it does. Well, there's a formula also that's followed, right? Like, so within the formula, which is like, partially hip hop oriented, partially reggae oriented, and partially, alternative rock oriented, all those things sort of have to be there for the formula to work. So if somebody can add those different qualities, or take a different approach to those qualities and mix them together on a particular song, as long as it's within the formula, it's still a Street Pharmacy song. Does that make sense? It's like
totally. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good way to put it. Makes sense.
Yeah. And I made that mistake in my career. I tried to make a rock record under the brand like Purely Rock, and it was a quality record, but you can't sell, like, if you're a McDonald's, you can't really sell couches,
right,
people that don't want them. Right, you can't sell furniture to them when they want a McDouble.
Yeah,
I want a McDouble, and then I go to McDonald's and they're trying to sell me a Lazy Boy. Like, I don't want that. So I learned that the hard way. I was a reggae rock hip hop band, broke formula, and tried to sell a record that was, very alt rock driven, and it was confusing. So that was a big lesson for me to learn too. And I think that's important maybe for people to learn.
Yeah, people. I think very well said. And people can definitely learn from that experience. As a Canadian and a songwriter, can you speak to us a minute about your how integral about your dealings with SOCAN? How integral is it to be involved with SOCAN as an emerging songwriter? What sort of resources are available to us as Canadians from them? And when should somebody start to investigate SOCAN and what it's all about?
I had some really good advice when I was about 11. Somebody had told me to sign up for SOCAN, who was a professional musician who had written songs. And they were like much older than me. I think they were in like their 40s. But they said, "You ever heard of SOCAN, kid? You should probably look into it." And I did. And I just kind of blindly signed up for it the best way that 11 or 12-year-old can, with the help of my parents. I'm like, somebody said I should do this, so I should do it if I want to do it. And then I had to learn how to SOCAN songs properly, or how to protect them. And I think it was I applied for some writers camps when I was younger too. I don't think I got into any of them. I tried. I just never had the material, and it was different back then. I think, we're talking, it was in the late 90s. So the internet was like still new at that point. And then in high school, I sort of really started figuring out how to do it and why I should do it when I started releasing like physical copies of things and putting things onto the internet. It's like, okay, maybe I should really start paying attention to this. So I would say immediately, like as soon as you're starting to write songs, you should sign up for every agency that you can that's going to collect royalties. And there's not just SOCAN either. Like if you're a performer, then you should sign up for the performance royalties, whatever that is in your respective country. If you're starting out in a little record label, or you're trying to make a business, you should probably sign up for the one that collects the royalty on the masters, right? Like information is your best friend. It's your best. It's the most important thing that you can have as a young artist on that side of things. And don't be afraid to jump into it. SOCAN's not going to hurt you ever, right? So,
well said.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about ghostwriting, because that's something that maybe to young artists is a little bit mysterious or scary because they don't really know what that means, maybe. So I'm wondering if you can shine a little bit of light on that. When you're working as a ghostwriter, what does that process look like? Do you start with a song? Do you start with a partnership with another artist? And how do you go about making those collaborations?
Now, originally, when I first got some of those gigs, I didn't, I'll be honest with you. At first, I didn't realize that I was going to go uncredited in the first one that I went into. That was something that was decided after the fact, and I was not exactly happy about it. So I learned that you have to be upfront. I was 17, 18 years old, right? You got to kind of be upfront about what are your expectations. That's another thing about the music business that's at a deficiency, I think, is that there's just a lack of like formal written rule in terms of information that is allotted to young people. Young people are not given this information, and it's not easy to find this information. Maybe with the internet it's a little bit different, but when I was younger it wasn't. So you go into situations where you think that everything, you have different expectation, and then you're getting burned. So if you're going to write for somebody else, then you need to make clear if this, the artist needs to make clear first if they want to be credited and in what way they want to be credited, and if they're going to want you to be credited, even before you get in the room. Like, that should be discussed. So the idea of ghostwriting is that you write for another artist and you don't get credited, but you make the money on the back end. And this is not uncommon. This is actually quite common. And I found that out in that first session.
Ryan, why would they do something like that? Why does that exist?
At the time, it was, I was writing for a lot of punk rock groups, a lot of groups that were in the rock field. And there is a certain level of, how do I say this? I don't know how to put this eloquently. It's not ego. Maybe. I see it from a business perspective. It's a point, you're at the point of sale. As a fan, you want to buy into something that you believe somebody is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in a punk rock band and you're writing with 5 different writers on a track, and 5 different writers wrote your best song with you, and they're not in your band, there could be a potential issue with the punk rock ethos, to do for yourself and the DIY ethic or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So that could be a reason. Rappers, the same thing, right? Like I've definitely written some verses for some people in Canada. And it's like, and I've worked with some big rappers. I worked with A+ from the Souls of Mischief, nice. And we have a song with them, which it wasn't a ghost. It was amazing. It was like I get to work with my heroes, from hieroglyphics, which was pretty cool. And I've been in other situations where I'm not, in that position where I'm like, okay, I'm in a think tank with 5 or 6 other people, or sometimes even more, and everybody's throwing words out for a particular artist, and the agreement is that artist who is like is a rapper or is an MC, you're not going to be credited. Like it's understood that it's like their life that they're writing about, and the fans, I guess it sounds unauthentic, but it's the truth. It's like, that's how a lot of this business is worked. I mean, you can go look back in the 50s when the bubblegum pop kind of stuff really started. There's a ton of writers on all those tracks, and it's all single driven. It's not even album driven, and we're back there now.
Right.
I mean,
good point.
Not everybody's going to be, I don't know. Not everybody's going to be Freddie Mercury. Freddie Mercury is the full package, right? The guy wrote, he performed. He was excellent. He's like the best, in my opinion, the best frontman ever, right? He had it all. Mm-hmm. And he could write it all, like Bohemian Rhapsody, right? But like now what's kind of happened is that, and this is another thing that's kind of strange too, and things have become like McDonald's, so much so that it's become so formulaic, and this person does this and this person does that, and this writer has this sound, so you need to work with him if it's going to go anywhere, and it's all like, that is all nonsense to me, and I don't like it. I think it's that's how we end up in a situation where people don't write from the heart and don't write or do songs in a way, or create their own music in a way that's theirs, and it gets lost. And I don't know why that is. Like, I can't really postulate why that is, to be honest. I don't know why we've gone back there. But I think it's sad. And I think young writers, they might find that's the case as well later on when they get into situations like mine where you're like, hey, you're not the best performer, Ryan. I remember hearing that, you're not the best performer, but you're a great writer. So like, in my professional opinion, from somebody who's working at some label somewhere, is that you should write for other people. And Bob, it's like, nah, do what you want. It's art, man. It's just, that's all. Don't listen to that. Why are you going to listen to some guy that got a job at a label, that was, okay, yeah, he liked music or whatever. That's great. But I don't know. I didn't really ever get any good advice about the soul of my being from any of those types of people. Like this for me, I'm writing for myself and from the heart. And I can do that for other people by having a collaborative conversation with them. Like I co-write with people for them, and if I go uncredited, that's okay, but at least it comes from them. I need to channel, I have to be the vessel that is channeling that. I'm using that, I'm the translator in that case, and they can still perform it, but they still have to feel it. Like great songs, I think, are written by somebody that's capturing a moment in a bottle, like they're capturing a moment and they're creating a shared meaning. If you're in a co-writing position or a ghostwriting position, you're creating a shared meaning with this person that you're in the room with. And also enough of a shared meaning with the rest of the world that you're saying this sound means this lyric is attached to this sound. And then when people feel that, they're actually feeling some sort of like transmission of that emotion, right? Like, and that's why, people can feel music. And I don't know if that makes any sense. I'm just rambling because I'm a overworked teacher right now. But
no, it does though.
Yeah.
It does make sense. I hear what you're saying. Yeah,
I'm out of it, guys. I'm not gonna lie.
No worries.
I'm working 3 jobs. It's a pandemic.
No doubt. No, it's good. This is I appreciate your perspective on those things, and especially what you were talking about. Not getting too caught up in the commercialization of the industry, and being true to yourself and that sort of thing. Who are some of your favorite songwriters of all time?
Oh man, so many. There's so many people. Paul Simon, I think for me is like, he's one of the best ever. His wordplay is unbelievable. I wish I could write a song like him. Graceland, that record to me is very special. I think I tried to make my own version of Graceland in my early 20s with the record called The Legacy of Rudy, where I went to Cuba. It's not South Africa, but like, I was trying to do something conceptual and do something like that. And the very inspired by Paul Simon.
Well, maybe we should work this into another question that we actually always ask. Hey, Maddie, maybe this could be kind of like a 2-part, whatever your answer wants to be. We always ask your like top 5 desert island albums. So I guess I would kind of work with, your favorite songwriter. So if you had to pick 5 albums, if you can name some of your top songwriters, and then maybe 5 albums that you can't live without, that people should listen to.
Smashing Pumpkins' Siamese Dream is my favorite album of all time. Nice. I would bring that everywhere. It's a magical record. Van Halen's Fair Warning would be up there. I think it's the darkest of the Van Halen records. I like it. The Far Side's Bizarre Ride to the Far Side is a staple in my collection. I would bring that. I love that record. It's so silly and playful, but at the same time, kind of real. It's, I don't know, Passing Me By is such a great song. I've sampled it. But there's a lot of great songs on that record. This is going to change by mood, obviously. Blind Melon's Soup is a fantastic album, and I don't think I would be able to live without. And then I only have one more spot. That's
well, let's just say you could have a few more. Just list off a few more would be great.
Sure. A Tribe Called Quest Low End Theory.
Nice.
Is that's probably that and Midnight Marauders. Those 2 records are incredibly important to my musical upbringing. They taught me a lot about being lyrical and also minimal, if that makes sense, in production. There's not a lot of, I think that's what makes Q-Tip kind of special on that, especially on a low end theory. It's just not much there. It's bass and drums, drum samples, and some horns, and lots of samples. It's just simple, but it's I don't know. It's cool. I like that record a lot. Midnight Marauders, I like that record a lot. It's a little bit more produced, but it's also it's great. It's a great record. Fife Dog on that record's awesome. His verses are awesome. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Pearl Jam's No Code. I know that's a weird one to pick, but I think it's so introspective, and I think that's where like Pearl Jam sort of stepped away. Vitology started to show signs of that, but Pearl Jam really stepped away from being this giant arena rock band in terms of the way it was presented mentally to its audience. And I think Eddie just did what he needed to do on that record, and I think that's a shift record for them. And when I was a younger man, I did not understand it. Even as a kid, I was like, I don't know. Like, why give me 10 in verses? But no, now as an adult, I realized the importance of that record in there.
Interesting.
And I would take that with me. Miles Davis Kind of Blue taught me a lot about modes. Like I'm not like a trained musician or anything. I just had it. I'm just a great ear musician, I guess. I'm not even great in my opinion, but my ear is pretty good. But that taught me how to approach moods and modes through modals.
And it's a very important album.
I listen to that record a lot. And then I would say Paul Simon's Graceland. I mean, those, I'm sure there's, Paul Simon's Graceland and one last record. I'm obviously heavily influenced by 90s alt. Ben Folds 5, Whatever and Ever Amen is so underrated. Man, that record's so good. That's one of my favorites. And I listen to that a lot, as much as Siamese Dream, as much as, anything.
Cool.
It's just a cool, honest, lyrical record. And there's no guitars on it. And it still rocks.
I'm going to have to go back and have a listen. I can't recall that, but yes, that's a good list and very varied across the board there. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you so much, Brian. So now I guess we usually end off the podcast by asking our guests for one piece of advice that they might want to, or it doesn't have to be one, but it's something they want to impart on the next generation of young artists. But if there's anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to speak to a little bit, you can totally tell our audience a little bit more about that. But just one piece of advice that you'd like to leave off with young artists.
Maybe two, I think. I think the first piece of advice I would give a young artist is that you should always try to stay as true to yourself as possible, with also allowing yourself to grow as a person. Being honest and creating things is that's what it's about. Being honest about who you are and what you're putting out into the world. I think it creates the best artist that you can be. And discipline. You need a lot of discipline in this business. It's the best songs sometimes come from inspiration and editing after. But a lot of the times it's just dedication to continuously doing it. Like, I wrote songs because I like to do it, but even on the days that I didn't like to do it, when we were really in the thick of it, I had that thing in my hand. I had the guitar in my hand. I was working, and that taught me a lot. That some of the best work that I'd ever made came after me not wanting to do the thing that I was doing. But it was just like the fact that I was in the routine of doing it and writing every day was super helpful. So that would be the advice. Those are the two pieces of advice I would give for sure.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot for your time today. It's been a pleasure talking to you, man. Thank you for everything.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me, guys. I hope that it was okay.
I'm sure it's very helpful. You spoke on a lot of stuff that I wanted to cover. So thank you.
Awesome. No problem. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ryan.
Okay.
Okay.
Take care.
See you.